And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and I am also its creator. So, my guest for today is somebody who is really, really special. Her name is Ms Sharon Schweitzer. So, Sharon is an interculturalist, author, and international etiquette consultant with over 20 plus years of experience in over 80 countries as a corporate trainer, keynote speaker, lawyer, and entrepreneur. She is an award winning entrepreneur and author of the Amazon #1 best selling book in international business, Access to Asia, which is on its third edition. It has also been named to Kirkus Review's Best Books of 2015. She has worked with brands including the Hilton Hotels, Lexus, and JP Morgan, as well as sports athletes and student leaders. Sharon has also been interviewed on notable broadcasts such as CBS, NBC, and BBC News, and speaks at ALA Big Ten Academic Alliance and XSSW Conference as an expert in cross cultural business. Along with that, her company, Access to Culture, formerly Protocol and Etiquette Worldwide, was founded by her in 2006 and underwent a rebranding in 2017. Access to Culture strives to cultivate an awareness of domestic and global cultural differences while fostering an appreciation of diversity, business etiquette, and international protocol. So, without further ado, I will pass the spotlight back to her. Sharon, how are you feeling?
I'm doing well, Calvin. Thank you for having me as a guest on your show. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. A little bit of the flu, apologies. It's a bit of the weather these days, but I'll be fine. Don't worry. We'll soldier on. All right. So this is going to be my very first question for you, Sharon. So, what was actually the determining factor that put you in this career course and the creation of access to culture?
Well, Calvin, I would have to say probably the fact that I'm the daughter of a Navy officer. My father was in the military, and I grew up as a third culture kid. So I spent my early childhood years and early school years in Japan, Tokyo, Japan. And then my father traveled around, and I traveled with him as the oldest of six children. And so we experienced a number of different cultures. And by the time I graduated from high school, I had been in 14 different school districts. So that was quite a culture shock for me. And then by the time I graduated from law school, I spent the summer, about a month after the bar exam, and I went to China, Hong Kong, and Thailand. And I knew by the end of that, I really wanted to do something where I was working with people with different cultures. But like many law school grads, I returned to the US and I went to work for a small law firm. And I enjoyed doing that. But what really piqued my interest was about 2 years later, I went to work for the Attorney General's office in Texas. And while I was there, the Civil Rights Act and the new Americans with Disabilities Act, there was an amendment to the Civil Rights Act was enacted, and I got to work on that from the ground up. And that fascinated me because so much of that involves national origin discrimination, um, people with disabilities, sexual orientation, a lot of different things. And so for me, that a lot of that involves different aspects of culture and cultural conditioning and how different people view different ways of discriminating at other people. So, and we're down here where I live in the southern US, we border Mexico. And so there was quite a bit of national origin discrimination. So for me, it was fascinating. And that led to a lot of training. And then I was hired by different companies, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I opened my own little consulting company, and that led to me doing what I do now, which is a lot of fun.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, for those of you who are just tuning in for this very first time, yeah, Global Citizens is an online platform of 45 minutes to 1 hour live interview whereby I invited third culture kids such as Sharon and myself, cross cultural kids, expatriates, nomads, and international coaches The main purpose of this is intercultural studies and awareness, and to actually make people realize that this global life is not an easy thing. It's not an Instagram story whereby you are living a dream life. It's not an extended vacation. Sometimes we have to live a life whereby we have to change who we are, how we talk, what we believe in, not because we want to, but because we are just trying to fit in a new kind of environment. So this is something that I hope people could be more sensitive about. And this is 2021, the time whereby a lot of unexpected things will happen. It's actually what a friend of mine like to call the era of unexpectancy, is because moving forward, we have no idea about how it will be. And one of the main issue that, of course, this past few years have encountered in this is the era whereby some of the past lack of awareness of intercultural lives has resulted in unwanted circumstances. So I hope that by doing something like this, people would be more aware of it. All right. So I pass the platform back to Sharon again. So Sharon, humans have this fear of the unknown, and we always would love to prefer to stick on what is familiar. Has this ever been a challenge for yourself in your career, especially when you are trying to explain about other cultures and etiquettes? Because when a certain way of eating is what you're familiar with, and then suddenly you're told, hey, if you eat it in this way, people would be much more attuned to you. But the thing is but it's not comfortable. This is how I like to eat. Why can't I keep doing this? So yeah, sure.
Yes, in fact, you know, we call that uncertainty avoidance and risk, avoiding risk. And it's one of the cultural dimensions that Gerd Hofstede and a number of his his son and a number of other people have studied and written numerous books about. It's also something that we talk about in this book called Access to Asia. We talk about uncertainty avoidance. It's one of his four original cultural dimensions. Some people are willing to take risk, whereas other people are a little more comfortable with safety and rules. And so neither one is right, neither one is wrong. It's just sometimes it depends on your cultural conditioning and what your comfort level is.
Right.
And so an example may be something in your everyday life. It may be something that is, some countries have a national characteristic for being more innovative. They like to take risks, whereas other countries tend to be a little more risk adverse. It takes them some time before they're willing to make investment in something new. But an example of something we have every day is wearing a mask. Some people do not want to wear a mask because they feel like for them, they'd rather take the risk. They have no problem with the risk. They're ready to get out there. Other people are not that comfortable with that kind of risk. They want to follow the rules, even if the rules are lightened up and they have a choice. They'd rather err on the side of safety and wear that mask and protect themselves or protect their families. They may double mask. They may, even though they're doubly vaccinated, they may take every precaution. They may still social distance. They may go all the way down the line because they prefer safety over uncertainty.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you actually mentioned the late Geert Hofstad. I actually have a really love-hate relationship with him, not because I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. So back when I was in university, I actually took a course whereby Geert Hofstad's cultural dimension was actually being taught. By now, it's already, I think there's around 5 or 6 dimension by then.
Yes.
So back then, I actually argued with my professor since since what is being said about Indonesia is something that I don't feel applies to me. Is because I'm somebody who's a lot more independent as compared to somebody who is actually supposed to be raised in a conservative society. And I grow up in Singapore, another country which also follow a conservative mindset. And again, I do not attune to any of this. So it took me years to finally, okay, I come to take a grip about it is because this is just me personally, but it does not represent everybody within the sphere of the cycle that he actually studied.
Yeah.
So, sorry, yeah,
No, please, after you, Calvin.
okay. So this actually comes to the question though. First thought, do you feel that third culture kids themselves, with you being one actually, do you feel that they actually, in a sense, exit the particular bubble of cultures? And of course, for how what Geert Hofstede believed, it's because for them, third culture kids are formed by the multiple cultures that actually make them into who they are. For example, maybe some country could be more conservative, and like notably, Germans, for example, they are a lot more straightforward. So as a result, having spent most of their formative years in another country, they actually adapt that particular trait, and which actually makes them, in a sense, an outsider outside of their own home country or passport country.
Let's talk for a minute about stereotypes and about generalizations.
Yeah.
So, there are many different theories of different cultural dimensions, cultural characteristics, and Geert Hofstede or Hofstede, however you want to pronounce that, is
Yeah, don't worry. I've never known how to pronounce his name until now, so I still call him Hofstede.
yes, that's what I say too, Calvin and Hofstede. There are many different ways to look at the cultural characteristics, and there's no one right way or the ultimate way. There are just many different views. And the one thing I always encourage people to do is think about it as an option. And not everyone is not going to fit into one category. There are always going to be different spectrums and different gradients along the continuum. And to say everyone fits within this one category does not work. That just doesn't work. It's not going to be that way. You have to take into account personality, blended cultures. People look at me and they think, oh my gosh, she is a US American. She looks like a US American. And they don't take into account any of the fact that I was schooled in Japan.
Are
And
you able to speak Japanese, if you don't mind me asking?
um, a little bit, but not as much as I wish I could. But
Fair
the
enough.
important part of that is that I do not think individualistically.
Correct.
Was taught starting out around a big table. We all started together at the same time with the assignments. We worked together. We helped each other. When I came to the US and I had to sit at an individual desk, I had to do my own work. I went into major shock. I was asking the other kids, what are we, are we starting now? And the teacher got upset with me because I was talking. And, I'm used to a different way of going to school and learning. And
Absolutely.
stereotyping people and assuming everyone fits in a different category does not work.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work. Not, especially not whenever you're a third culture kid and you've been immersed in a different culture or began your schooling in a different culture. So I think we pick up and we carry things with us. I think our cultural conditioning runs deep. So we carry things with us from the different cultures where we've been immersed. And I
I
don't
love that. I love that line, cultural conditioning. I love it.
Well, it runs really deep, and I think it stays with us. And I think we value community, we value the group effort. We don't put ourselves always first as individuals. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just gives us a different viewpoint to look at things. And sometimes I step back and I think, oh my gosh, this is such an interesting way of looking at things. It gives you a different perspective. Um, to sit back quietly and just watch.
Understood. Understood. To sit back quietly and just watch. When I actually discovered the term third culture kids, a friend of mine actually told me the meaning is if you don't ever feel a sense of belonging in both your homes, then you are a third culture kid. So over the 3 years of doing this and 2 years of nearly 2 years of doing this broadcast, I've actually discovered a second definition or my own personal definition of a third culture kid is because you look and live at the world from a third person's perspective because you see the world from outside of the bubble. So I guess in a sense, this actually this actually in a sense I think it is in synergy with what you actually said. Am I correct to say that?
I would agree with you.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. Yay. My theory has been validated. Hooray. All right. Now then, okay though. I want to ask you this though. How important do you feel is soft skill such as listening to other stories, empathy and information in today's society? And how do you feel this could help two individuals of two different generations or cultures to interact with each other? Because a lot of times we stick to what we know, as we have discussed earlier. However, when we actually take the time to sit down, we realize that we actually can have a common ground that we've never expected, is because a lot of way how we see things sometimes is actually just another way of seeing it. Like for example, I believe in Africa. To them, they believe that that is the next journey of life and it has to be something that has to be celebrated. However, for most people, they would see that that is actually something that is sad and it has to be mourned upon. It's just the different way of looking things. However, if we just do, how important do you feel though for people to listen to stories?
I think listening should be 80-20. I think it's very important. I think if I had to rank those three, I would rank empathy number one, listening number two, and information number three, because I don't think you can really effectively listen unless you're empathetic, unless you display empathy toward another person. And I think you have to use all three components of empathy. And I think when we listen, it needs to be 80% of the time we need to listen to someone, and then 15% of the time allow them to ask us questions, and 5% of the time um, we're responding to those questions. I think that's really crucial. So I hope I'm answering your question about the important levels of those. I think Brene Brown does a really good job in her YouTube videos and in her writing of her books and expressing empathy. And there's a University of Michigan study that came out recently that says empathy is decreasing in our society, and it's really unfortunate. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but
It's pretty sad though to actually hear that the most basic things that a human is actually supposed to be able to learn, not only outside of school, in fact, it's something that's supposed to be built within a human society, a human conscience, is something that actually need to be taught. It's pretty sad to hear that actually.
one of the things in the Washington study, I saw this. Um, I've got it listed here, is that the causes for the decline in empathy were the rise of social media, smaller family sizes, stronger pressure to succeed professionally and academically. All of those were potential reasons for the decline in empathy.
Okay.
So people,
Uh,
oh no,
Sorry.
no, pardon me. It's just that people are focusing on other things, Calvin, as opposed to being empathetic.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, is because that is actually a question that I came up with, but I actually have another one for that too, actually. How do you feel though a multicultural global etiquette be translated to those who may not experience it, especially in countries that could be developing? And what you mentioned, people are too focused on something else first instead of empathy. So, how do you feel this could be translated and explained and be imparted in order for people to be more understanding?
Okay, I think we talked for a minute. When you say developing country, you're referring
Yep.
to the United Nations and the way they categorize developing countries or economies in transition,
Sure. Yep, correct.
developed countries. Okay, and then
Yes, correct.
another category for developing countries where they have fuel imports or exports.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, because even developing countries, many of those countries may have populations in poverty, but many of those countries are also have extremely wealthy populations. And the US is a developed country, and we have many populations in poverty, and we have a real problem with homelessness. So I think the question could really go to many countries. Um, I mean, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, um, India, Oman, many countries are on the list of developing countries that have extremely wealthy contingents. I think a big part of empathy and multicultural, a big part of it is treating people as human beings, treating people as you find them, being kind. Like I said earlier, our cultural conditioning runs deep. We all know respect when we see it, don't we, Calvin?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have nothing but the utmost respect for you.
Well, and I for you. And if you're in a developing country or a developed country, you know when you've been disrespected, and your poverty or your wealth level are irrelevant. You know when someone has been disrespectful and they're being unkind. And so I think if people can express more empathy, both cognitively, if they can do it sympathetically, if they can do it, emotionally, then that is going to come through. And I think we just have to take the time to do that. And people are struggling and people are trying to make it day to day. But even in the way that we distribute food and water, there's a way to do that respectfully.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is something universal for everyone, is that respect is something that that could be translated to any kind of culture, any kind of civilization. I think it just comes down to the key mindset of am I disregarding your personal feelings about a certain topics. This could be actually be used in a sense as a universal guide, if you want to call it, to actually get to know people, to actually be understanding of people without, and hopefully it is something that the world can be more accepting towards and take the time to understand. And
Yes, I have traveled many places where I have been the minority. I have been in a place where I don't speak the language. I'm trying to use the phrase book. I'm lost or out of my element, but I'm respectful. I'm calm. I'm patient. And I get people who will really help me. And I think a big part of that is because of the respect that I show the people, the culture, the environment. You know, I think that makes a huge difference in how people respond, is whether you respect them and their environment.
Under- that's true. That's true. I
And
think that. Oh, sorry, Sharon. You want to add on something to that?
no, after you, Calvin.
Apologies about that. Yeah. Okay. With regards to what you said earlier on whereby you have experience where you are considered the minority and you may have encountered some difficulties though. What new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life by interacting with the cultures outside of your own, actually?
Oh, definitely by surrounding myself with people who are smarter than I am. No question. When I go to Asia,
Yes.
there are so many brilliant, smart people. I'm terrible with the sciences and with STEM. I'm much better with English, and I love working with my clients in Asia. They are just all brilliant, all of them, and I learned so much from them. And so I like to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am. Of course, my husband's smarter than I am. He's brilliant. And most of the people that I work with, my co-author, Dr. Liz Alexander, on my book, so smart. Oh my gosh, so smart. And I like learning from other people. So I think surrounding yourself, surrounding myself with smarter people has made a big difference because it makes me reach. Um, I would say that's for me number one.
Is there any number two?
I like working with women from other cultures in global leadership, like with the GCI, the Global Competencies Inventory, because I learn different ways that culture views leadership and how different that can be from the US ways that we view leadership. So I find that fascinating to find out there are things we do as leaders in the US that are really viewed very poorly in other countries. In individual praise, individual markers, milestone. It's there's so many different things that we do in the US that are not acceptable or not appropriate in different cultures besides Asia, other areas of the globe. Um, are you looking for a list, Calvin?
No, I'm good. No, I wish I can. If you have a PDF of that, please send it to me because this 32 minutes, I am trying to be, I have nothing but the utmost respect to all of my alumni on the show. But a lot of what you say is actually some of the most captivating thing I've ever heard because of the way you interpret the situation. And I truly, truly appreciate your insights on this.
Well, you're very kind. The only other thing I'll tell you that I really like doing is watching films in all these different languages that I don't understand. I love watching films in Finnish and Danish and, you know, just all these different languages because it gives me insight into different cultures and it makes my brain stretch. So I like doing that too. But you're wonderful. This has just been so much fun, Calvin.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, on that note though, in your professional opinion, with all your experience though, how important is cultural savviness for the millennial and post millennial generation? And if you don't mind, I want to add a little context to this. So, I am actually working on an article of growing up in the East and growing up in the West. This is something that was actually proposed by one of my followers. So, he believes that growing up in the East, the standard of maturity is how well do you listen to your parental figure Whereas in the West, it's more on how do you use the independence that has been given to you? How do you actually be responsible for it? So, in your professional opinion, though, how important do you feel a cultural savviness would benefit the my generations and the generations even after my own?
Ooh. Well, I think cultural savviness, from my perspective, in my humble opinion, is crucial if you are going to succeed as a millennial or post millennial, because you need to have it if you are going to succeed diverse, in a world with diversity, equity, and inclusion as a leader. And if you are going to be able to do that with evolving technology and be able to network, I just think cross-cultural collaboration is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I think if you're not savvy with remote work and in-person and virtual relationships, you're going to have a really difficult time. And I think relationship building involves trust, and it's crucial.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough on that. Okay, now this is something that is, well, people may call this the snowflake or a strawberry generational mindset. But do you feel, though, politically correct awareness should be encouraged? And how could it be presented in a more acceptable and cordial way? Is because uh, I this is something that it's typically would be said is because why do you guys complain so much of a certain way of doing things, of a modus operandi? But the thing is that, well, times have changed. Technology may have imparted to it. Globalization could have been part of it. But the thing is that nowadays people are a lot more savvy with information. Is because you can't no longer just tell somebody to do this and you expect them to just follow. They will question you because they want to know how this would be beneficial in the long run, or how this could benefit them, or they are just trying to look out for the company. But of course, well, people are used to doing things a certain way. So Sharon, I will pass this question to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think PC, or political correctness, is a term that is used to refer to language that seems intended to give the least amount of offense.
Correct.
When it's used, when it's describing groups that are identified by, external markers like culture, gender, race, or sexual orientation. So, but the concept has been discussed and criticized by commentators from across the political spectrum. So, and it's used to ridicule the notion that altering language can change the public's perceptions and beliefs, as well as influence different outcomes. So I think we have to acknowledge that from the outset. But what a lot of people don't know about political correctness is the history of political correctness. And I'm going to make this brief, but the term first appeared following the Russian Revolution in 1917. It first appeared in a Marxist Leninist vocabulary. Now, if you want, I can send you some detail on this, but at that time it was used to describe adherence to the policies and principles of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So that was political correctness. It was the party line.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you know this. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and okay, then in the early 1990s, in the late 70s and early 80s, the term began to be used by liberal politicians to refer to extremism of some left-wing issues, particularly what was perceived as an emphasis on rhetoric over content. So kind of form over content. Then in the 90s, the term was used by conservatives to question and oppose what they perceived as the rise of liberal left-wing curriculum and teaching methods on university and college campuses in the US. By the late 90s, the usage of the term had again decreased, and it was most frequently employed by comedians and others to lampoon political language. So today, I think we are dealing with what's called cancel culture.
Correct.
And people think, well, if I, say anything politically incorrect, then I am just going to be blasted. So I think the bottom line here is, should we be worried about political correctness? Yes, we should. Because if we think racist thoughts, we're going to say them. If we think sexist thoughts, we're going to say them. So if we can change our mindset, if we can alter our thoughts, then we'll change what comes out of our mouth. Now, does that mean we need to shame everyone who makes a mistake as they're working on changing their mindset? No, we don't need to do that. We may find people who are really hardcore, who are going to say some phenomenal things that are really, really offensive. Maybe those people don't need to have a platform. Those may be the type of people who are, get a hard time. But I think when someone makes a mistake and they admit their mistake and they apologize, they need to be given a little bit of a break. We need to show some human empathy for them. But the political correctness, now that we have social media, those mistakes are going to be shared, and people are losing sponsors, and when they're making really ugly comments and they have a long history of political incorrectness, it's surfacing and it's being shown. And in my history as a labor and employment lawyer, a lot of times what I saw was the biggest offenders had a long history. It wasn't just one time. It wasn't just two times. It was a long time. And nobody ever reported it. Nobody ever brought it up. But once we started looking into it, we found it or the auditors found it. So I'm probably answering way too much and way too long, but there you have it.
No, it's not too long. Don't worry. If it's long, if it's something long, but the thing is, it actually imparted a certain value, I don't see a reason why not, right? All right. Okay. I actually have two final questions for you, Sharon. One of them is actually outside of our questions on cultural etiquette or diversity related. It is actually asked by Miss Megan Norton, one of my former alumni, and actually she was really excited to see your episode, but of course time difference will does not permit her to watch it live, but she will be catching it on replay. So her question is this: who was one of your favorite SIIC fellows? So yeah, I told her if she's not the one, then I'm not responsible for it.
Of course, Megan was one of my favorite SII. We called it SIC, Summer Institute of Intercultural Communications. Of course, Megan was one of my very favorites. Also, Andre Uriga, who is my co-author on my new and upcoming book. Oh my gosh, there's so many people who were so wonderful at Summer Institute. Oh my gosh. Megan is phenomenal. She's another brilliant woman. And you want to talk about someone who has wonderful empathy, and that she is a phenomenal third culture kid. I really enjoyed watching her episode with you, Calvin.
Thank you. Yeah, it was actually released on my birthday. That was something that I really love, that she actually took the time to actually edit her usual opening, is because she took a personal approach to that particular one. So that was actually a really fun episode to do too. And I really hope that there's actually a lot more of this kinds of representation of third culture kids, is because we this is the time that we actually can step up to what the global world could be. As Dr. Ruth Van Rieken once said on my show, the term third culture kids will grow and it will keep on evolving. So there needs to be a lot more different voices to actually represent it.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. So the last one is technique is customary for all third culture kids. I usually ask this for the very first question. However, for your case, I actually put it as the last because I really would love to hear your insights a lot more. Please define home. Uh, and is it more relating to the person, to the people that you love, or the location itself?
Define hope.
Home, home.
Oh, home. Oh,
Yes.
define home. Oh my gosh. Oh, home. I think home is where your heart is. And I think home is, it can be anywhere you want it. So, it's not necessarily where you're currently living or residing. It can be so many different places. And we recently had a flood in our West Austin home because of the Texas storm. And I refer to that as our home. And right now we're kind of displaced. And so we're staying in a condo downtown. And I can't call it home because I don't feel like it's really home. I call it the condo. Um, so I think the word home really, it resonates differently with all of us. And I do think it's where our heart is. And I think it can vary at different times during our lives.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think the home is where the heart is something that applies to most of culture kids, is because we tend to gravitate more towards people instead of places, and it's something that could be, we hope, could be universally translated, is because when we embrace the uncertainty, we discover more of ourselves, and it helps us to become a better version of who we are. All right.
That's
Sorry.
that's
Okay. Sorry, Sharon. Sorry, the feedback got a bit cut off a bit. What you were saying?
No, I was just agreeing with you, Calvin. I think the only other thing, come here, Toffee. The only other thing I would say about home
Oh,
is where my dog is.
hello. Hi, buddy.
Say hi. Say hi.
Hello.
That's
All
Toffee.
right. All right. That is actually all the questions I have. Sharon, is there anything you want to add on?
Calvin, you're wonderful. And I'm so honored to meet you and to have you invite me to be a part of your show and your podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, most welcome, most welcome. I've actually looked forward for this episode for quite a while. So it's really something that's encouraging that actually now you actually can make an appearance, and I truly appreciate it. All right. So first off, I just need to send a thanks to Mr. Puji, who actually leave a like, and to Megan for actually leaving that particular question, because she was actually looking forward to this, and I will be putting it on replay earlier later on my Instagram TV and my YouTube. So for those of you who are interested, there is a promo code for you guys for StreamYard, which is the software that I'm particularly using. There you are. It's on the description box. And if you are ever interested to try out to do something like a podcast, or maybe you want to learn new skills in graphic, there's a credit for Canva located at the description box. Last but definitely not the least, I need to thank Sharon for making time to come here today. I know she has a very busy schedule, and well, with the recent flood that happened in Texas, I truly appreciate that you actually make the time to come here today at a place that you may not consider your home. It's a condo, but at least it is somewhere that is comfortable for you. So with that, that's the end of Global Citizens episode 91, conversation with the founder of Access to Culture. Do take care of everyone and hope the rest of your 2021 will be better. Bye.